Welcome everyone to today's webinar, Visual LANSA V15 Plus, Routing Made Easy. My name is Tony Graham. I am LANSA's Product Marketing Manager, and I am joined today by Edgar Wharton, LANSA's Product Manager and V15 expert and Visual LANSA expert in general. Thank you again for joining us today, Edgar. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Hello, everyone.
So to recap what we're going to be going over today, today's agenda, today's webinar will be a quick 30-minute tops webinar. I'm going to go over a quick V15 Plus recap, just highlight our two new main features, and to hand it over to Edgar. Edgar will go into the V15 Plus routing overview, then give us the routing demo, and then we'll have time for questions and answers. There's a Q&A tab up top or down below, wherever you have your bar at, and you can simply ask questions, type them in there, and ask questions when they come up, and we'll get to those at the end. So we can to go over the Visual LANSA V15 Plus. So for the new features, real quick, just take a minute here. The two main features are progressive web apps and routing, which Edgar will be demonstrating today, the routing side. But as far as progressive web apps go, with V15 Plus, you can create the service worker and app manifest with a single dropdown. And V15 Plus will automatically allocate resources to be cached. And then you can drag and drop additional resources. So you can add to, you can take away from, and really customize the resources you need cached for when that app is installed and then launched. And then select your cache strategy from a single drop-down menu as well. So you can web enable or progressive web enable a regular web app in V15 Plus in about 45 to 60 seconds. And then routing, which Edgar will get into, but just to highlight some of those with the client-side routing, generate routes through template and view dialog, generate routes pragmatically through RDMX for the ultimate customization, better organization of application through the use of route components, nested routes, and then of course, link directly to content you want your end users to view, which is ultimately, you can guide them right there. So with that said, Edgar, I can hand this over to you and let you talk about routing.
All right, yeah. So we're really excited about the work that we've done on the routing framework. There's a lot more that we are intending to do just to add in the overall flexibility that a lot of people really want to see, both from a programmatic perspective, but also from our own, visual low-code perspective. In general, we have the ability right now to create nested routes, do child routes, and so forth. You're able to really specify what the active path of any segment is within your route to add on extra organization. And so when it comes to the routing, a lot of the main features that some of you may be familiar with, especially when it comes to client-side routing, you're able to define whether you have, your routes are protected or if they're public routes, which essentially equates to, does my route require authentication before someone can actually retrieve that information or see that actual visual display within the browser. So in general, for those that really don't know what the difference is, one of the things with client-side routing is that you're not reliant on a full page refresh. So even when the URL changes, what happens is that instead of doing a full page refresh, you're also pulling from the resources that you have, and then there's communication happening within the actual application. And so for us, rather the RDMX will be used to update the URL, and that will fetch and display whatever the new content actually is. So yeah, instead of there being an entire page refresh, only some elements inside the application will change. So that leads to less data processing, quicker routing between your various views, and overall smoother transitions between those views. Next slide. Yeah, so this slide just kind of gives you a general overview or an idea of what you'll see within the Visual LANSA IDE. So what you see here are actually two separate ways of instantiating your routes. You do have the programmatic aspect, if you decide not to utilize the wizards and the code that's generated and you want to add in some additional customizability. However, for the most part, the code that's generated within the wizard is really the bare bones of what you'll need to actually jumpstart your routing framework that you will be working on. After that, there's a lot of additional new class parameters and components that we have added in that allow for greater flexibility to allow, to determine what happens once, a route is navigated away from and things of that nature. So some of the things I kind of wanted to just like talk about on this particular page, the box in the bottom kind of right-hand corner on my screen. So these are some of the common things that you are going to want to determine and also input in terms of like providing the information, declaring, this information about your particular route. So in general, access, that refers to whether the route is public or protected. Public means that anyone can visit that route. Protected will typically fall along the lines of this route requires a sign-in before the information can be viewed. So beyond that, you do provide the name of the route, and then you provide whether the route has a parent route or whether it's just going to be parented to your main router. And then from there, it's really determining what the path is. A lot for the generation, the paths are already included, and then what you can actually do is customize what those paths are, and then also nest other paths within that. So what that means is that you're able to have a view container. You're able to have your views, and then you're able to have views within a view when it comes to actually routing and navigating your web application. Some other areas that aren't shown on this slide right now has to deal with wildcards. So essentially, a wildcard will enable a path, a string of a route, and it will trigger a match if no exact or partial match are found. So an example of this is someone navigates to customer with a Z instead of customers with an S. Because that may be a very, highly, it's something that happens very often. What you can do is you can actually do a wildcard. So if someone does try to navigate to /customer with the Z at the end, it'll redirect them to customer with an S, or it can redirect them back to the homepage. And that's really up to you. And these are things that you essentially will choose. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go into a nice quick demo of some of the ways in which you can actually get started with the routing framework today. So Tony, I'll just take it over from here, I guess.
Yep, okay.
Okay, give me 1 second, guys. There we go. And so can everyone see my screen? I'm guessing yes.
Yes.
All right. Okay, so ignore what you see right here. So one of the first things that you can actually do within Visual LANSA, if you just really want to try a few things out, see what happens when you play around with the routing and so forth, is you can go to the build a mobile web application area, and you can select one of the templates. And now you'll see within these templates that we have some additional option of views with routing. And so I'll keep that selected. I'm going to keep everything else the same. I kind of want to change the color. So I'm going to go ahead and generate this application. Awesome. So when you do this, what will essentially happen is we will prepare the base level routes in the background for you for this particular application. Didn't want that to pop up yet. Um, and so what you'll find is that on your main web page, you will see that alongside what could be the various views and so forth, you will have the routes that are associated with them. We're actually going to be doing some additional usability work in this area, just so we can make this a little more user-friendly when people are viewing these routes, so that they have a good understanding of how everything is really laid out. Your other option in order to see how your routes are laid out and how they interact with one another is to actually look at your outline view. And so here we have included the router. And so if you expand that, then you're able to see all of the routes that you have within your application. And so one of the great things about using this as a starting point to really learn and understand what routing is that, you're able to, one, view exactly, some of the main details that you will need to fill out for your route. So right now I double clicked on the chart route, and we've decided that this route is going to be protected. So the user needs to sign in before they can actually view any of that information and for all of those visual components to actually come alive. We also see that the full path is already provided for us. And everything else, if there's an action that you need when the page is navigated against, or that particular component is destroyed, you can actually determine whether you want to drop that and it reawakens the next time someone clicks, or if you want to keep it, in a state of suspension. But yeah, the routing framework works out really, really well. Using the generated templates makes it very easy for you to begin to understand how that organization works. Another part of this is that outside of being able to quickly instantiate these routes for your web application, we've also added linkability. So one of the things that we realized was that, we have these links, we need to make sure that they're matched up to the routes and that matching algorithm executes successfully. So now whenever you're using a PrimMD list menu item, then you also have the option of providing a link to a specific route. Again, it's all about the usability. And so now that we have that link to that route, you end up, increasing that organization that you're really looking for. And you're also going to be helping the user navigate much better, because now they can right click on a link and send it, and they send a person to that exact spot, given that they have the correct authentication to do so. Now, if we take a look into the source area, for many of you that are on this call right now, a lot of this is going to be extremely familiar. So what I want to do is I'm going to scroll down, and we're just going to look at the actual route setup. So for this one in general, if you're going to do this programmatically, one of the first things you have to do is you're going to have to define your router. And that's going to be as simple as doing a define com and adding in the router class, and then providing that router with the name. Here, we just use the name router. Then you're going to want to break it down into what are the views that I have and what are the necessary routes that I need to account for. So within this demonstration, one of the main routes that we have to account for outside of default and home is the sign-in route. So, exactly what happens when a user signs in, where they're going to be navigated to next. So it answers those types of questions. And then you begin to associate the various views with the actual routes. And so it's slowly going into this transition where your routes and your views essentially kind of become one and the same at some point. And so it's really that simple when it comes to putting together the routes, ensuring, whether it is public or private, if there are wildcards, if there needs to be redirects, what the path is, what happens when the view is closed. These are things that we already knew that our users would need the absolute most easy control over. And then outside of that, we also provide some additional classes and class parameters that allow you to really manipulate what's happening while the application is actually running. So you'll find that there have been some additions to SysWeb. SysWeb, one of the things is that, hey, what happens when this route changes? Are we going to close all the dialogues? Are we going to redirect them back to the sign-in route? Things of that nature. Also, you have the ability to flexibly determine what happens when a match is processed within your application. So we wanted to make sure that people would have the ability to manipulate and really determine what events happen once something is matched, or if a specific route is matched to a specific view, what happens in that event, what happens when someone is about to sign on, where are they going to be directed? Perhaps that authentication is for one particular person within your business. So then the first thing that they need to actually see is a dashboard view of today's current sold products or something of that nature. So all of this it's very simple, and that's the most exciting part about it. And it allows you to get a better understanding of how the routing framework works and what you can actually do to manipulate it and really speed up a lot of the execution of your own applications. So one of the things I do want to show you is that when that application actually executes, you'll see that the way your URL is structured is completely different than before. So now we have it's more of that pretty URL. And so you're able to really just, right click and then send this URL off, and it immediately can link to the content that you want another person to see. So, if I go to contacts, because this is a protected view, the first thing I have to do is actually sign in. And then once I sign in, my contacts will begin to load. And there we go. And we can keep moving down this path as necessary. So perhaps we want, another view or route nested under our contacts. Then we can actually enable nested routing. And I'm going to show you an example of that in a second. Again, just looking at charts, I'm already signed in. Now this is my organization. So give me 1 second. Okay, I'm actually going to go back to the design tab. And so one of the things that I was talking about earlier is that we can do nested views. And nested views actually is really easy to add right now. So I'm just going to testing. And instead of be a placeholder, we have a new one that says enable nested routing. So home puppies. So we're going to go ahead and generate that. And then what we're going to see is that we now have another view container within our view. And so this is actually it's going to be parented to the main router, or we can parent that to, we can make that its own router itself. So we can go ahead and open this up. And when we open this up, we now have a whole new area in which we can add additional views that people can go to, and it increases the navigation. So this would be important for, let's say, if you have multiple customers that are accessing, they have their own accounts for the web application. there may be one main view for everyone that has access to the web application, but specific customers, the organization would need to lead them into other areas that are really specific to their organization or their business or something of that nature. There's a lot of various use cases for this that come in handy as we begin to really start building out our various web applications. So again, I would like to just point this out. Now we have more in this area of the outline. So from here, what I see is I have this router, I have a home route, and I have an additional route, and I now have nested routes within this. And so again, this essentially adds to the value of your web application within linkability, within the ease of creating the router and the routes, and the ease of bridging them together with your various views. It's a great win-win situation for all customers, and it allows us to start to realize, additional ways in which we can work to help speed up the execution process and speed up the organization of your various web applications. So again, one of the things I really wanted to point out was, instead of having to spend a lot of time to do this yourself, we've added it within the design tools so that you can quickly start playing around with the creation of routes within your current web applications. And lastly, the other way of doing this outside of if you want to use the generator, you would actually just go to File, Web Page, and you'll see that we now have Views with Routing. Go ahead and click Views with Routing. I'm going to say do routing desk. Home about. Go ahead and click Create. And that's just going to set you up with a very generic view. All of this is very much changeable, but it at least takes away any of the clutter from the generated templates, but still provides you with the same bit of information that you'll need to really get started with building out the various routes. And one of the things that we are working on right now is that we do know that an application could potentially, especially with a lot of our customers, could potentially have hundreds of routes. So we are looking into ways of making this a much more easier and appealing means of putting your routes together. Because no one wants to have to consistently define a bunch of routes and routers and so forth. So we're looking at how we can make this more easy on the eyes and still be exceptionally usable and flexible. And one of the ideas we have right now is really like, okay, so that sounds more like, a routing configuration file of sorts. So we would have one space where all the routes would be housed and defined to make sure that we can keep the code clean. But yeah, this is a really great thing that we've actually started doing within Visual LANSA. And it's actually only going to get better as we begin to receive feedback from all of you as to, what are some potential enhancements or things that would be very interesting for the routing to be able to accomplish. For example, I know that in some frameworks, you're able to attach, your animations and transitions and so forth directly to the routes. And so there's a lot that we can actually continue building out within this area. So we would definitely love any feedback that you may have, just to make sure that we can keep things as easy as possible for you all. But yeah, that's our very quick view of the LANSA routing framework. Very simple, very easy, very fast, and it will definitely improve the performance of your web applications.
Okay, thank you, Edgar. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, no problem.
Just kind of go back here.
There we go.
Oh, there you go. All right, so that's that wraps it up. If there's no questions, doesn't look like anybody has a question, and so we thank you everybody for stopping by and checking out Edgar's demo of routing. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself or Edgar. If you want to learn more about V15, you check out lansa.com, go to the Visual LANSA platform page, and So Edgar, there is a question. It says, I assume it's easy to retrofit routing into an application which already has views, containers, menus, etc.
Yes, it is. As it's completely. I was actually working on one earlier today. So it's one of our shift examples. So let me see if I can pull it up. So you are able to retrofit it. So right here, this is one of our shipped templates that we provide for task management. As you can see, currently there are no, there are no routes within this. I actually started working on this a little earlier today just to kind of, make sure that I have a decent understanding of the routing myself. But you're essentially able to go in, and you have to do this programmatically at first. I know we're working on some ways to really just add in routes, wherever they may be with a click of a button. But you would define your router, and then you would begin to define the various routes, and you would add in the paths and match those to the actual views that they need to navigate between. So yeah, in short, you can retrofit them without a problem. If you're using prim MD menu items, you're able to add in a link parameter right here. And then you would add in the path for wherever you want it to link to. So in this example that I have highlighted, we're going to link to the settings. But yeah, so yeah, I would say definitely give it a shot. Try it out. If you have any feedback, please let us know.
Perfect. Thank you, Edgar.
Yep, no problem. I saw something. What did I see? Okay.
Question is, how do you integrate with the DB2 database?
For the routing, or well, sorry, hold on, let me see this. Okay, how do you integrate with a DB2 database? So for us, when it comes to the integration of a DB2 database, I mean, you're essentially just going to be pulling that data in. So if you are not already a customer of Visual LANSA, we have a whole suite of tools that enable you to interface with your DB2. Other than that, when it comes to working within this routing framework, that's essentially going to all be on the Visual LANSA IDE, and you're just going to be pulling in data from that database. I hope that answers the question, but I would definitely say that, one, we have a whole tool set for IBMI. So integrating with DB2 is one of our most standard things.
Yeah, we install right on the IBMI, and so I mean, calling RPG, integrating with the DB2, that's bread and butter for us. So you won't have any issues with that. Okay. Well, we are at a half hour there, so thank you everybody for the questions. Again, feel free to reach out to Edgar or myself with any questions after this. And again, check out lansa.com if you have if you want to look into V15 further. And as always, there's a free trial if you want to take it for a spin first if you're not a customer. And if you are a customer, again, reach out with any questions. Thank you everybody for coming by. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.